Tina, I spent a great deal of my life, including now, allowing people to treat me bad. I mean, what the heck? I heard something recently that gave me a little insight and some empowerment. Drew Barrymore had Valerie Bertinelli on her show, and they were talking about this very thing. And Drew said that she thought she deserved for people to treat her badly because of the things that she had done in her life. And she finally realized when she admitted that she had done things wrong too, to herself and to others, that she was finally able to say, "You are wrong for treating me that way." So, Tina, have you ever felt that you deserve to be treated badly for things that you have done?
I remember feeling this way a bit as a young girl and probably sometimes as a teenager. I think now, though, with so much counseling and understanding my own worth and value, I don't feel that way anymore, except
Okay.
for the occasional karma that I kind of think, not trying to make light of this, but kind of think, maybe we all do deserve it sometimes, like I can't even think of a quick
Mm,
example off the top of my head, but in just I mean that more of a tongue in cheek sort of
right,
way.
right.
But um going back to the deeper topic, I can remember feeling like I must have deserved this, but more often than because I did something, I would think because I didn't do something, or that I
Hmm.
I just plain deserved it but didn't understand why.
Okay. That's interesting. I have literally said to myself many times, even in a day, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I say this, that, well, I deserved it. And I'm not sure where that comes from, except that I have worn the guilt, I think, of wrong that I have done in my life and just felt strongly that I didn't deserve any good.
Well, I now am realizing and believe in the power of your mind, the power of self-talk. In other words, what you think you deserve, or if
100%.
you think you can or you can't do something, you're probably right.
Hmm. I mean, I say this all the time. When I was a swim coach, this is the kind of stuff that I would coach, I would teach. I have someone in my life that does not treat me well at all. And they are still very much a part of my life. And for some reason, I cannot tell them, and I just still allow it.
So I'm not sure if you're asking my opinion, but I was gonna insert it here. Seems like a good place.
I
Sometimes
mean, I'm sure that there are so many people that do this.
I would think so too. And sometimes there may be valid reasons for allowing what you just talked about, if you will. Sometimes I think people stay married, for example, because maybe they need benefits or things like that. I think it's still possible though to set boundaries even in the circumstances you're talking about. I think just like Drew Barrymore said in the example that you gave just in the beginning of the show is that you don't have to you don't have to take being treated a certain way. I do think that the overwhelming majority of us do deserve to be treated well, just like humans. It's the whole do unto others as you would want done to you. And I think that there's got to be a way, if there's a relationship that you have to keep, to be able to set those boundaries and not let someone walk on you like a welcome mat, a doormat.
Yeah. There is still a part of me as well that when someone says something really mean to me, I do the opposite of what I should do. I shut down instead of stand up for myself and say, I deserve better. I don't know why I do that. I think I do know why I do that. But you are much better at this than I am.
Well, I don't know if that means people have said a lot of mean things to me or people I love, or if it means that I don't know what it means, but I gotta
You
give
demand
you
respect. I've seen you. If you feel like you're not being treated right or something, I mean, you will speak up for yourself.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. And I got to share a funny story. So, we had our first baseball tournament over the weekend. It ties right into this. And we have a new player on the baseball team. And I've never actually talked to his dad before. Just we've seen each other, at a couple of games prior to this. So, we are at the tournament game over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the other dads who I know really well was talking about a time where he's very loud. This dad is very, very loud, and not in a negative sort of way most of the time, but
Okay.
he's very loud. So he can be heard from anywhere. Okay. So at one or two or maybe three of the games last season, his voice got himself into a little bit of trouble with the umpires. It's not that he said anything inappropriate. He's not like that. It was just he's loud. And so his voice can be heard. And so he was reprimanded a couple of times. So he mentions almost
Wow.
getting kicked out of a game last year. And I mentioned a time where the year prior to that, I may have opened my mouth during a game against one of the umps, not the umps, it was a first base coach who was making blatant calls for the other team and nobody wanted to say anything. And it just came out of my mouth. I just said, "We all see what you're doing." That's all I said. And he tried to kick me out of the game. And so
Oh my
as
gosh.
my friend at this tournament was saying, telling this new dad about that, I piped up and said, "Yeah, I almost got kicked out of an 8U game." And this new dad turns to me and he goes, "Yeah, I could see that." And I was like, "What?" I said, "What do you mean?" But he said the way that he said it, you said it better. But he said, "You just have an aura about you that says, 'Don't mess with me.'" And I'm like, "Yeah, pretty accurate. I'll give you the shirt off my back. I'll do anything for you. I'm as sweet as can be. You cross me though, and you better look out." Just like you're saying, I feel like it's what you're saying. I demand respect. I know my worth and my value, and I'm not going to be treated crummy. I truly believe there's so much good in people. So it stuns me when people are really rude or they say something nasty. I will pick and choose what I want to say when I want to say it. Like the lady at
Right.
the concession stand this weekend, she was not very nice, but I was like, you know what? It's just not worth my energy. You only have a certain amount of energy every day. So
Mm-hmm.
my mom was always very strong and would stand up for those who needed it and gave them a voice. She was
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
fearless. And I think that's where I get it from. And I admit it sometimes when rudeness or meanness catches me off guard, I don't always have something to say because I'm not a defensive person. So I
Mm-hmm.
don't always have a comeback, but I do believe in accountability for myself and for others. And you can bet your bottom dollar that we'll be chatting about it face to face. I don't go behind the back. You will get the real deal with me. And we will talk it out. And I'm not afraid to stand up to anybody or anything.
What's interesting is that, there's certain things that I am absolutely 100% and the words just flow out, and it's when it's about my kids.
Mm-hmm.
It's when I'm on the phone and they've charged me too much for something or, some phone company or whatever. And I am really good. Like sometimes I'm like, ooh, I could be a lawyer. I could be like, you know,
My grandpa always told me I would make a fantastic lawyer or paralegal, even.
well, when it comes for fighting for somebody else,
Yeah.
I'm amazing at it. But then when it comes to, you know, the closer it comes within that bullseye, the outer, and then you get closer, and then somebody really close to me, for some reason, I have a much harder time being able to speak up for myself, except for when it comes to my kids. And I think it's because, they're outside of me and they're so vulnerable or innocent, and I want to fight for them, that mama bear thing.
Hmm. Do
But
you also think that some of it is, for me, I try to teach my kids the pick and choose your battles thing. Like my middle son has a very big personality like I do and very big emotions on, there's no in between
Okay.
with us. We're either all in or we're all out. And
Okay.
so when we're all in, that can pose some issues because we are all in. We feel it to the depths of our soul. And I mean that. So sometimes I think that I might hold back on a reaction because I want to teach my kids we can't fight everything.
Mm-hmm.
No one's perfect and people aren't always going to like you, and that's okay. That's
Right.
really okay. If you did something wrong to cause that, you apologize. That's really all you can do. Try to make it better. And if you didn't, people are going to just not like you because some people don't. They could be jealous. They could just have no reason. People are weird.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I think, I guess I'm wondering for you, do you maybe not say anything? Because I always try to think of this too. Is this going to impact me a year from now? Am I going to remember this a year from now? And sometimes I have to think if this is not going to impact me in the long run, then it might not be worth my time and energy and effort now.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It was just a thought I had as you were talking about that was maybe you don't say anything right off the bat because it's not someone who you'll either see again or that's just not as important, in your life, or
Mm-hmm.
maybe you just take it and it just rolls off your back and you're like, you just don't let it sink in because you shouldn't. I don't know.
Well, when it comes to that I do see often and they hurt me, that's when I don't say anything. I
Mm,
wish that I was able to speak up for myself more. I am, though, with other people, able to, draw the lines in the sand, put up the boundaries, be able to say uh, something and distance myself. I mean, that's really distancing myself is saying something. Sometimes not
right,
saying something is saying
right.
something. So, yeah, I mean, that's where I handle those kind of situations. But if somebody really close to me, and I think that it stems from way, way, way back when the people in my own home were the ones that were treating me bad. So, when I wasn't able to speak up. So somehow being able to find that voice, I think, is really important.
I think so too. I think, and I,
Mhm.
I may have shared this before. One of my counselors had once told me that, Tina, maybe you don't always have to put up a wall. Maybe you could put up a window between you and so and so.
Yeah.
But
Mhm.
But for me, this, and this isn't true for everyone, I'm sure of it, but for me, out of sight, out of mind helps me heal, helps me to heal on my
Okay.
own terms, on my own time.
Mhm.
And then when I'm healed, then I can start to see those people again, either whether it be on social media, face to face.
Mhm.
Then it's like I can cut a hole out of the wall and make it a window. But for me, it takes some time. Sometimes I need the space and I need to completely detach myself from the person or the situation so that I can heal at the pace I need to go. If that makes sense.
It does. Well, this is something that I'm not really proud of myself for. I mean, I've grown in so many ways, and I need to grow more in this. I recently read something on a study on Rahab from the Bible. Now, I wrote an entire book called Sinful Woman, which, if anybody wants it, it's on Amazon. And the entire book is about a woman in Luke 7 in the Bible who was kneeling at Jesus's feet in complete love for who he was, just emptying herself, surrendering herself before him, and he was allowing her to do all of that. While that's happening, the church leaders were judging her for her actions and saying all kinds of things about her. So, what I was wondering when I was reading that study about Rahab, it took me back to the book that I wrote on a sinful woman. And it made me think, what if she heard them while she was doing that and thought to herself, they're right. I don't deserve his love. I don't deserve love or any good at all.
Hmm. I do wonder how that would have changed the scenario, which is why I think in our heads, sometimes when we tell ourselves that, we start to believe that we don't, going right back to the beginning of what we said. But at the same time, I would say, the church that I grew up in, I guess didn't grow up in, but as an adult, went to, in many churches and songs and, Christian stations say all the time, we're not worthy of Jesus' love. And so that's always been very
Mm,
conflicting for me.
hmm.
So if we're not worthy, then why does he get, like, I still to this day have that disconnect of, yes, I get it. I hear you say that I'm not worthy of his love. So that's why I don't understand. Then why does he, quote, still love me? And I don't even feel that. So that's a tough one for
Hmm.
me to answer because I'm in a situation right now in real life, where there's still this huge disconnect because I get I'm not worthy, even though I didn't kill anybody. I've not done anything horrific in my life. So to me, I feel like, okay, I get that I'm a sinner because I'm not perfect. I know that. But I
Right.
also don't think I'm horrible and undeserving, but yet I've been told for decades that I am. And so I don't know. Well, if I go as far to say this, I don't know, maybe is it maybe some of the teachings that are taught in church, is that maybe part of the problem contributing to this?
Well, I personally have been in a situation where church leaders made me feel like I was not worthy to be there. So I do believe, though, that that's all how they felt. But I do believe that that's not how God felt. And I don't think, coming from somebody who worked in the jail ministry, and I guarantee that if the jails opened up, a lot of the churches would not know what to do if they got flooded. And because there is nothing like a chapel service in the jails. And I often said I would love to have actually have that been my church, because they are fun, they are down to earth, they got nothing to lose, most of them, and they are just all about it and so fun. And so I can remember this one particular time, and we taught this. I asked a question. One of the women stood up. She told this whole entire story in the Bible. And another one from the very back, this other woman in the back, you heard this woman just go, "Ooh, did you see the movie or what?" And I just loved it. I mean, they were so fun. And
Yeah.
they would just tell you, you know, churches have the people, when you go to church, we always called it the parking lot wave. You get to church, everybody's fighting, and then you get and you're like,
Right, right, right.
yeah, everything is great, it's wonderful, and that's how you answer. And it's almost like you're afraid to let everybody know the real you. And that's how in a jail church service, everybody just tells you everything that's up. So,
It sounds beautiful. It sounds real and right along with what we talk about here.
yeah, well, back to Rahab. She was known as a prostitute, and the Israelites were looking for new land. They had sent spies ahead, and Rahab hid them and helped them escape. And she lied to the king of Jericho that she didn't know where they went. The point is that she was used by God. She was looked at as worthy. It doesn't matter what we've done. God does not look at us and say we deserve something bad or something bad said to us. So why do we think because we've done this, or this, that we deserve to be treated badly? Or at least sometimes I have felt that way.
I don't have the answer. I think it's just based on each individual's maybe upbringing, voices that they heard growing up or continue to hear throughout their life.
Hmm.
I think, you know, there's power in the spoken word. And so maybe to combat
Hmm.
what your mind is telling you, you have to
Yeah,
actually say the opposite out loud. And for me, that's really hard because it feels very strange.
saying the opposite out loud. Okay.
Yeah, and I'm up in my head a lot.
Hmm.
There's I mean, I can tell you, I am never bored. There is always something going on up there. And so to actually speak it out loud to me, to say you're worthy or to go through, whatever it is
Hmm.
that you're wanting to kind of get the point across, it's counterintuitive to me. But I've done a little bit of research that it actually is powerful, the spoken word, because you start to believe what you're saying and what you're hearing. And yeah,
Hmm.
there's some power
I
in that. But
believe that.
I do think that we are all here for a purpose, and there's plenty of space in this world for all of us to be happy. And I do think that we can be used for very wonderful, huge, great, big things.
We've talked about generational trauma on this podcast. In fact, just in our last episode, Rahab was actually part of Jesus's family tree. And I found that interesting. And so was David. I mean, if you know about David, he had someone killed so he could have the man's wife. And it said that David was a man after God's own heart. Now, not because of that, but the point is that we can still have done things that we are not proud of, but still be a good person, where God can say that we are his. And we can do many things wrong, and he can still love us and will always love us. And I'm guessing that there is a part of me that does not love myself. And that's where I think that I'm figuring this out, is that there has to be a part of me that doesn't love myself for me to allow people to treat me negatively and that them make me feel less than and not do anything about it.
I think that's possible. I think it's also possible to go in and out of, like we talked about before, being triggered by past trauma. I feel like you can be
Mm,
healed, but
mhm.
you can still feel a trigger, and move past it quicker and get through it. But maybe that just triggers a shutdown in you. I don't know, but I know what it feels like to just feel that disconnect. And I know that God says we're his, and we make mistakes. And I think maybe just the bigger thing is to say that, I forgive me and move on, and say like that I love me too. So one of the things I love that my 3-year-old does, and he does this all on his own, he'll run through every couple of days, he'll run through a list of I love mommy, I love daddy. And he'll say he loves his brothers, he'll say he loves his friends, and he always includes and I love myself. And it's actually one of my favorite things that he says. Nobody taught him that. He's done it just in recent months. He includes himself. And I make sure to point out, I love that you include yourself, buddy, because you absolutely should love yourself. And he just smiles real
Wow.
big and he goes, I do. I love myself. And then he goes back through, and I love mommy and daddy. And he's 3. And so I think that, I don't know. I think that upbringing can be a problem or not, in certain people's instances. And I'm really going back to the whole saying it out loud, power of your mind, the, negative self-talk or positive self-talk. And I mean, look at this. He's 3 years old and he loves himself. And I love that.
You know,
And
I've
it
tried
just
to
came
get
natural to him.
I've tried to get my daughter to do positive affirmations and say
Hmm.
things about herself
Yep.
positively. She just says, I can't do it.
Mm,
So, I mean, I think if you are not at the point where you can say those things to yourself, even if you fake it,
right.
and
Right.
you might not believe it yet, but you might allow people to treat you worse because you can't even believe that for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe sometimes I've done this with one of my boys. I've just held hands with them and said, repeat after me, and he will.
Mm,
And I've done it with each of my 2 older boys on numerous occasions.
mhm.
And you can tell when they start believing it, because you can feel, the change in the voice, or it gets
Okay.
louder. And I
Mm,
I believe in myself, versus, okay, I believe in myself. I believe in myself. I believe in myself. I believe
yeah.
in myself. You see, all the differences. I love when we get to the point where you actually feel like they believe it.
That is so cool.
Yeah, we've
Because
done
that's how
that.
you want them to be sent into the world.
Yeah, yeah. I want them to be way more confident than I ever was. It doesn't mean cocky. There's a big difference.
Oh, right.
I want them to be confident and I want them to be okay with people not liking them because
Hmm.
that is the reality of the world that we live in. We shouldn't be people pleasers. Not
Hmm.
saying you go out and make things miserable. I'm just saying that, there's only so much that you can do. And yes, you should give it your best. You should do your best and all of those things. But at the end of the day, world changers aren't pleasing everybody. They're just not. They're trying to make the world a better place. And sometimes that means you have to be the lone one standing, or you have to
Right.
feel confident in whatever your decision is, even if it feels like it's the minority.
I really like that. Wow. That was good. World
Well,
changers.
thanks.
Yeah, I really like that. Now, this is kind of funny, but this is an example of not being treated the way I should be at certain times in my life. Well, my husband at one point, we've had a really rocky relationship, not the ideal marriage. And yeah, he took my two older kids for Mother's Day, took them to Dollar General, came back, and in the bags, still in the Dollar General bags, hands them to me and says, "Here's your Mother's Day present." And it was cleaning supplies. And
Wah, wah.
I mean,
Oh
for one
boy.
thing, I thought that taught my kids something really awful, too. I mean, they wanted to get me something, and that's what he wanted to get me. And by the
Mm.
way, it wasn't because my house was messy or something. It was just, I mean, that's just who he was. So, what do you think gets us to the point where we can say to others from our depths, no, that's not acceptable. You take that back and you get something else. You treat me better. I deserve better.
Yeah, I think maybe it just comes, I think tolerance is different for everybody. So perhaps you've met your threshold and you finally decide, you know what? This isn't setting a good example to the little people in my life who are looking at this, and I've taken it one too many times. It is time for me to stand up for myself because I do deserve better. And you will treat me with respect because I am your wife or I am your mother or I am your whatever
Mm,
it would be.
mm-hmm.
And I don't even know if you have to say why, but I guess maybe maybe it would be better, you give examples. Look, on this day, this is what happened and this is how it made me feel. And then this is what happened and this is how it made me feel. And these young kids are watching this. Don't you want to be a better example from here on out?
Right.
If you want to see me or them or whatever it may be, this is how it's going to go.
It
Or
kind of
you don't get to see us.
It reminds me of the women in the battered woman shelter that would show up at our doorstep after years and years of being treated so badly and finally finding it within themselves to say, you know what, I've had it. I am leaving and I'm going to take my kids and we're going to start a new life. It can be
Yeah, I
scary. And it can be
mm,
scary. I mean, what I'm explaining wasn't even close to what those women went through to get to that point but it's just demanding that you and your kids deserve a better life.
you know, I do think it all goes back to the threshold. I've watched several shows that talked about that. Maybe I can't think of the names of them, but people who were in abusive relationships, or there was, like some love triangle or whatever it may be. And you ask them,
Mm,
well, what did it take? What was the final straw for them? And they just said, you get to a point where you've just absolutely had enough. Something just clicks inside of you and you're like, no, it's not going to be this way anymore. I don't deserve it. You work up the courage and then you get out of the situation. And I think that threshold is different for everybody.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And I can feel when I was the director at that shelter, you could just feel how strong those women actually were. It was such a combination of they were so strong, but yet they were so beaten down at the same time. And they had just, uh, and a lot of the times it was about their kids and why they wanted to change. But to find it within yourself just to be enough, to be the reason why you demand better, just because you're important enough.
So one of my favorite lines from the movie The Help stays with me all the time, and it's you. She says, "You is kind, you is smart, you is important." And I've all that's always stood out to me from that movie. And I I'll say that to my kids, and every day before, just about every day before they walk out the door to go to school, I always say, be kind, have fun, help others, and most importantly, and they respond, I love you, so I I just think that there's so much that we need to remember, that each of us are here for a purpose. I truly do believe that.
You said
And
it.
when you figure it out, it really opens things up. And I think it really makes you see the world differently, see yourself differently, see the surroundings differently. And I think that might be also part of making you realize that you deserve better as
Mhm.
well. So I think it's a threshold. And I think it's once you know your purpose, like I believe I'm a conduit. And that doesn't mean you just have one single purpose. One of my purposes in life is to connect people and things to other people and things or resources. And I get great joy out of being able to do that. I think finding your purpose is so important, and you could have more than one, and they could change by season, you know? But when you do, it gives you
Right.
so much.
I think that people who end up at the end of their life and miss that, and somewhere along the lines, the people who end up back using, end up back in the prison system, end up, alone, depressed, or making really bad choices a lot of the times, and maybe not, but just that maybe they spent a long time looking for that purpose and they didn't find their purpose. They weren't able to really grab onto it. And so then there was that hole, that longing, trying to figure
Sure.
out why were they here. My 7-year-old has asked me, why am I here? Why was I born? And I find that interesting that even at 7 years old, he wants that answer. So I think that we all have that want to know, why are we here?
Right. And I wish I could say, oh, at 9 years old, you're going to figure it out. But it comes different for everyone, you know?
Mhm.
And it really does hurt my heart when children or people who've really had a hard life, things they didn't deserve,
Right.
absolutely not.
Yeah.
But it becomes their responsibility to heal from. And it just hurts my heart that maybe they hadn't had someone speak positive to them, or they didn't have the tools available, or they did but they didn't know how to use them. If you show me, sometimes we have the tools and we can use them, and sometimes we just don't know maybe what they are. But i'm so
Hmm.
confident that I'm so confident your 7-year-old will be able to find the way, because with with a mom like you, there's just absolutely no way for it to go any other direction. I mean, seriously, I know it shouldn't be this way, but you are such a gift to them, to your kids, and you're raising kids again for the second time.
Hmm.
And you've got some things under your belt, and I'll tell you, you are one to not give up. And I
I
know that
don't.
you will help your kids find their way. Absolutely. And I'm sure it probably hurt your heart maybe to hear that, but at the same time, there's a whole lifetime to figure it out. That's the flip side. We can figure it out, and we can figure it out together.
Well, him in particular, he is gifted and he will figure it out. I know that he will. And he is so inquisitive. He's always asking, questions beyond the grave. He's always it doesn't matter what it is. He is looking at it and he's trying to figure it out. So I love his mind. And I love
Uh,
that he asked too.
yes.
You know,
Yeah,
going back to this, do you think that there's ever been someone that really deserved everything that they got? I mean, honestly, I think so.
I
Um,
do. I gotta tell you, I am not gonna hesitate when I say this. I like karma. I think sometimes karma bites the right people. It just
mhm,
does. And sometimes karma's gotten myself too. I can look back and say now, like, "Ooh, yeah, I might have had that coming for a
mhm.
decision that I made." But there are some people who I think deserve what they have coming for them. Okay, you can take an example of someone who murdered someone. I don't think you just deserve a slap on the wrist. No, you don't.
Right, right.
I
Well,
guess you would definitely be able to speak more to this than I could, but I do find it hard to believe, and I know I'm not alone in this. Not saying it's impossible, but I do find it hard to believe if people really change. If you're a murderer, or especially if you're a mass murderer. I don't know. Is there any rehab? I don't know.
it all
Is
comes
it
down,
genuine? I think that's what I mean. Is it genuine if there is
I think
a
that
change of heart?
there's different sets of people within the prison system or when somebody does something to that extent. And I think that there are people who are genuinely good people who have made mistakes or done bad, or went on the wrong path and then they they do turn
Sure.
it around. I do believe in those people and I've seen that. But then there are those people that I think where the mental health piece is there, where there just isn't any way for them to turn it around
Right,
because it just, whether it's a sociopath or something to that degree where, I mean, that is their mission, is to hurt other
right.
people. But there are different degrees. But the people who are like the sociopaths and the people who really do all they want to do is the second that they get out is they're going to hurt somebody. It's a different story. Now, I really did get to know some of the women personally in there and in the jail. And one of the women, I mean, something had happened and she ended up murdering somebody, but her heart was a good person. Now, she should have the same she should have that consequence. She needed to do that life in prison. She had to. I mean, that's the consequence to her actions. But her heart was still good. She really, and I mean, she took a life, and I can't think of anything more horrible. So she absolutely deserves to be there. But could she still be a good person?
Well, I think that this leads me to a question I've often wondered. Okay, let's say that you were held captive. Okay, I mean this happened in Cleveland, Ohio. There were three women that were held captive
Right,
in a home
right.
for gosh a decade, if I'm remembering correctly. But let's just say that someone's held you captive for a very long time, abused you, abused you, abused you, and then one day you take their life. So I don't I don't feel bad in that situation. And I would go as far to say I don't feel like the person who took the life may deserve the life sentence that they will get. At
Right.
what point?
Well, I
So I
think if
guess
there's
I guess that's a
self-defense, there's
right.
self-defense when the person is right in front of you and you have to do something because it's just, or you're going to get killed. I mean, there is that. But then there is the other where I think you just need to let the law take control and play it out. That if you take somebody's life, even if they held you captive for that long, you're gonna do the time. It's just the way it is.
Yeah. But that's just it's just a hard situation to, think about. The law is the law, and it doesn't say, well, if you do it for this reason, then you're okay. You don't have to spend as much time in here. It's just supporting, someone who was tortured their whole life, and saying, I understand why you did what you did. I mean, it was still wrong, but I
Was that the
understand why you did
Menendez
it.
brothers? Who There were two brothers that happened to, and then they killed their parents, and they're doing time now for it.
That
Um,
might be.
that sounds familiar to me. But anyway, that was a big discussion everywhere. They were tortured by their parents, and then they ended up killing their parents. So I don't know. I just think that there's so many better ways that it could be handled. Have you ever felt that you have ever done anything so bad that you felt for yourself afterward and maybe for years after, well, I deserved it. I deserve
Yep.
whatever's coming my way.
Yep. I've also felt that way about myself too.
Yeah,
Long
I have
ago, but
too.
lots of healing since, since then, and realizing that, you know what? Mistakes are meant to be made. They mean you're learning, especially, I mean, if, as long as you learn from them, you try not to make the same mistake more than once or twice before you learn from it. But yeah, I've absolutely felt like, well, I absolutely deserved what was coming to me.
Do you think God loves you more or less depending on what you do?
Oh boy. I don't know how to answer that. I'm in such turmoil with God currently, mostly because of my mom's sickness and her diagnosis and
Right.
situation. And, you know, um, hmm, I don't feel loved by God. And I know that someone else very close to me would feel the same way. We aren't sure what we did to deserve this. Even though we know
Mm-hmm.
that's not how God works, it still
Mm-hmm.
feels that way.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really the only way that I can answer that question is by giving that example.
Mm-hmm.
What about you?
Well, I think a lot of my life I felt that way because other people made me believe that. But if I just would have focused on what what the word says, what God says that he does love us. I think God loves us. I mean, God is love. So how could he not love us? I don't know. I don't know. I think we've all done things, but I still think that he still loves us. And I don't think that because we did something that this happened after, like
Right,
all I believe that when I'm saying it, but
right.
like something will happen and I'll be like, well, you know what? You called somebody a name the other day, and so you deserve this right now. I mean, like things like that will come to my head, and I'll just be like, well, see, came back to you.
Oh, Anne, you're so funny. So I don't know if I don't know if I would go that far for me, but I love you anyway. And I would say mine is just probably it's this deep longing to feel the love because I'm such a big feeler. And I've had counselors tell me, well, maybe you don't need to feel as loved to know you're loved. I'm like, but that's what I'm missing. I don't know how else to describe it. I mean, you can say someone can, it's just like in real life. If someone says they love you, but they don't show you that they love you,
Mm-hmm.
how do you feel loved? You probably don't.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if your love language isn't words of affirmation, it's, you know, acts of service. So that is that's such a hard question from what I'm supposed to know to
Mm-hmm.
how I feel, if that makes sense. That's the best way I can break it down.
Mm-hmm. And that's really good. You know, part of the thing with me, and I was just thinking about this, is that, I never took a traditional path in my life in any way. And when you look at certain people and, they're born by I don't know, I'll just throw out, one's a doctor, one's a lawyer. They have this really good, great genetics. Their grandparents were amazing people. Their great
Hmm.
grandparents were
Hmm.
amazing people. They have kids. You can see them succeeding in the school systems, and they're going to be like, the best musician or the best athlete, or, you could see them getting into Ivy League schools, and you're just sitting there going, well, of course. Of course. you
Hmm.
know?
Hmm.
But
And
then
I felt
here,
that way before
and
about other
I,
people in my life. Yeah.
yeah, and then I'm like, well, and you were adopted. You adopted your kids because you couldn't even have kids, which then you ended up with your grandkids, adopting them. And n- even my disabilities and everything, nothing has taken the traditional path with me. And then I even thought about how my siblings, and if somebody, I can't tell you how many times people have said to me, what, oh, do you have any brothers and sisters? Yeah, I have a biological half sister and half brother who never lived with me, and my biological half brother passed away from drugs, and I have kind of sort of an adopted sister who lived with me, but she was really my adopted cousin, and we kept her in the house as my sister, but after my dad died, then we put her back in the system, or my mom did anyway. And I have a half brother from my adopted dad's side who is so much older than me. He was way gone when I was brought into the family. And I have my biological dad's side that I just met through DNA matches, but there is so much pain from the biological dad that none of us stayed connected. And I actually had my biological mom say to me one time that I was a dry birth and I was a pain from the very beginning. And, I'm just thinking about this and I'm going, oh, now I think I know why I feel like I'm a little tainted. I mean, I don't know. You see this lineage over here, and then you see this lineage over here, and then you're like, well, can someone actually be tainted?
So there's a quote by Beth Moore that comes to mind, and it's when everyone seems to be getting a miracle, but you are the miracle. And that came to mind
Okay.
as you're telling that
Mm,
story. And
I'll take
also,
it. I'll
I
take
I
that.
I agree. And I can't think of the author of this, quote, and it's not a direct quote anyway, but it's something that helped heal me because I get really frustrated of, looking at certain families like they're just perfection. If there ever was something close to perfection, that is them. And of course, things come easy to them. Look at this generation after generation after generation of near perfect people. And then I think, and then there's me who, and it's not that I'm trying to throw myself a pity party. It's just everything seems to be an uphill battle. I'm learning things
Yeah.
for the very first time. And the quote had something to do with you're who your bloodline has been waiting for.
Mm,
And I hold on to that because if it is something
I'm
that
gonna
my
use
mom
that.
taught me, and it's something that I really do believe about myself, and I think my all of my children, I think anyone who knows me well would say, Tina, you are who your bloodline has been waiting for. Because I
I'm
have, and recently, just in the last like 6 months, reading that quote about I am who my bloodline has been waiting for, just man, I'm like, okay, I can do this then, because I
You know
think, well,
what? That puts a fire under your butt. I mean,
yeah,
that makes you just, it makes you release all that stuff that has, that you can
yes,
feel from all the generations before you that have
yes,
failed.
yep, yes, that's exactly how I feel. I feel like, okay, for I that single-handedly, that quote shifted my perspective to make me feel like I'm not enough and I'm not worthy to. That's absolutely what my purpose is here, is to break all of the decades, generations of sin and crap and shame and crap. And that's what I'm here for, is to that I am who my bloodline's been waiting for. It changed everything. I have a fierce determination.
I'm going to use it because I know my three feel as if they have those same kind of feelings that, there was a lot that happened to them because
Sure.
of things that
Of
happened
choices that
before
were not
that
their own.
and
Mhm,
I would love for them to see themselves as the hope in that generation
mhm.
and in that lineage.
Yes, I think that's why the word hope is one of my favorites ever. I collect wooden little signs, if you will, for like the windowsill. And I've had people give me several that say hope. And
Mm.
I think if it's anything you can take away, don't lose hope. look at you, look at me, look at our families. We still have all the hope there. And I loved when I read, "You are who your bloodline has been waiting for." And I'm like,
Mm,
yes, yes, I
right.
am.
I love
I
that.
It's
I
so
love it.
hard and exhausting at times, but so
Wow.
worth it. We are who our bloodline has been waiting for. We are turning the page, creating this brand new book, brand new chapter for all of those that come after us. I think we've mentioned before on the show that it isn't it amazing? It should be a given, but it's not, because it wasn't for you and for me of how we're raising our kids. They will have much less trauma, hopefully none, but much, much, much less than what we had, because we know more. We're doing different things. We are
Mm-hmm.
who our
Mm-hmm.
bloodline has been waiting for.
Yeah, yeah. To anyone who feels that way, that you're tainted or that you're just not worthy, everyone has purpose. We need to quit lying to ourselves and allow other people's lies define who we are, because that's what they are. They're just lies. No matter what path has been placed before you, you can forge another. And I have never given up. Tina's never given up, no matter what. I pushed through and believed in myself, even though, unfortunately, I've allowed others to treat me less than. I'm going to work on that. I'm really going to work on that. What
I
I do,
believe that you will.
yeah, I'm going to make that like a promise to myself. What I do know is that regardless of whatever lies before you, whether you've had a traditional path or not, everyone is worthy and loved and has purpose.
Absolutely. My path wasn't so traditional either. I am also adopted, but my mom is my real mom. Just a different type of adoption. And, when you are in a family and I've always felt like I belong to my dad's side of the family, but, still in the back of your mind, that voice comes in. So I agree 100% with what you said. We all have purpose. We are all worthy. We are all supposed to be here. Someone once said, if you're not dead, there's still something for you to do
Oh
here.
yeah.
You're not dead
Oh,
yet. So, just keep going, keep on going.
I want to ask everyone if there's anything standing in your way from thinking that you are important enough to be treated well. Is there anything that makes you feel that you are disqualified from being loved? And I want you to really think about what we're talking about here today, because you
Yeah,
are. There's nothing that disqualifies you from being loved or feeling worthy.
absolutely. And remember, you are who your bloodline has been waiting for.
If you are sitting there thinking, I'm not worthy to be loved, I'm not worthy at all, I want you to stop right there. You are worthy of being treated right. You are worthy, period. I want you to ask yourself these questions. Why do you feel that way? Was there something planted in your head? When was that? How old were you? Put yourself in that situation when it happened. Can you think of a replacement phrase? Every time that you allow someone to treat you badly and it makes you smaller, makes you feel less than, I am asking you to come up with a phrase that works for you, that you can say in your head. For me, it will be, you don't deserve this. You deserve better. Coming from someone that had to find the strength young to make it as a failure to thrive baby and had a lot of horrible messages said to me very young, I know you can do this. I was told I would not graduate high school. I got a master's degree. I was told I would not be able to hit a ball, and I practiced until I hit a home run. I was told that I wouldn't be able to really ride a bike, and I ended up riding a unicycle in parades. I was told I would not be able to drive, and I worked until I was able to drive a postal truck, even on the right side. I was told I would not be able to read and comprehend because of my eye disabilities. And because of my executive functioning and working memory, I figured it out. I had trouble being social because of being autistic. I used the interviewing skills I got from being a journalist to be able to ask and communicate better with people. I learned when I thought that God did not love me, when people from the church told me to leave, that I was not worthy. They were the ones with the problem. And trust me, they were. I wrote a whole dissertation about it to get my master's, and it was very well received, by the way, on restoration ministries. And I honestly think that this is a thing, but that's just a side note. Don't let anyone let you feel a certain way. You are important. You are loved. You are worthy. You are the one in your bloodline that the world has been waiting for. Remember, at Real Talk with Tina and Ann, we always say that there is purpose in the pain and there is joy in the journey. You can join us each week anywhere you get your podcasts. You can reach us on Facebook at Real Talk with Tina and Ann, and you can go to realtalktinaann.com and catch us on our website and get all of our episodes. Message us. We will message you back. You have access to our monthly newsletters and you get special messages from us. So just remember again that you are worthy, you are loved, and you have purpose. And if you're that person that is floundering around and feeling as if you don't have purpose, I'm telling you that you do. You do. And it might be right under your nose. It might be something that you've been doing all along. It might be the person that's sitting right in front of you that needs your help. And if you can't find it, somebody gave me the best advice when I was just in my absolute worst space. There was nothing I felt that I was doing right. Somebody said, go help somebody else right now. You go help somebody else. It was the best advice I got. I got up and I got a degree in helping people. I'm so sad in a way that I'm not able to really volunteer and do all the things that I want to do. I have a list of places that I want to work and help at, and my life keeps me from doing that. So, you know what I did? I was like, you know what? I'm going to make a podcast from my own house where I can continue to make a difference in people's lives. So if there's roadblocks that are in front of you, you've just got to figure out a way. Go, get up, show up. And that's what I have learned this along the way. If you feel as if you can't, the best step that you can do is just to get up, show up, and your purpose will be right in front of you. I promise you that. There is always somebody out there that can benefit from your help. Go to a homeless shelter to help. Go somewhere to volunteer. If you show up to love somebody, I guarantee, and I say this all the time, no matter where I volunteered, no matter where I have worked, when I'm giving to other people, I'm always getting more back, and I'm always feeling as if this is why I'm supposed to be here. So just remember, you are important. You have a purpose. Nobody should talk to you in a way or treat you in a way where you are less than. So keep being real and keep being you and believe in yourself.
Thanks for joining us on Real Talk with Tina and Ann. We look forward to seeing you next week.